Hey guys, it's your boy Corey, and today we will be making some whole wheat biscuits. My craving for biscuits came from my family's trip to South Carolina. I was surrounded by gluttonous, greasy, buttery goodness, but I could not attain it, and so I sought to recreate that in my own kitchen. Okay, that's a lie. I did attain that buttery goodness I also wanted. I was at the complimentary breakfast at our hotel and saw a biscuit and I just shoved it down my throat. It was the greatest thing I have ever had. One of the main ingredients in many southern biscuit recipes is buttermilk, which is necessary because it allows the biscuits to rise and introduces some acidity to cut through that buttery goodness we talked about before. I imitated buttermilk using some almond milk and apple cider vinegar. Apple cider vinegar not only introduces the acid that will cut through our buttery goodness, but it also slightly curls the milk to make it thicker like regular buttermilk. I used a mixture of whole wheat and all-purpose flour. This not only makes it a lot healthier, but I believe the whole wheat has a bit of a sweeter taste that all-purpose cannot compare to. On another note, you could replace the baking powder with baking soda, as if you've ever seen a baking soda tower or Joey's World Tour's baking soda and vinegar challenge, you would know that it gets very bubbly, and those bubbles are great for nooks and crannies in your biscuit, which is why we want also to take our coconut oil and break it up into little itty bitty chunks so that when it goes in the oven, each biscuit, the oil melts away and leaves behind this beautiful golden, almost fried holes, perfect for consumption, that will take your biscuit to the level of that southern biscuit that I had in my hotel at the complimentary breakfast. After I broke up my bits a little more, I formed a well in the middle of my flour mixture and poured in the almond milk and vinegar. And I started mixing and mixing and mixing, and then until a shaggy mass forms. After that, I turned out my shaggy mass onto a floured surface and began to knead it. And the key here is that you don't want to over knead it, or else you'll get stuck with biscuits that have the texture of rocks, and rock biscuits are not good for eating. Remember to minimize the amount of time you work with the dough and be gentle with it. By doing so, you will minimize the heat transfer from your hand into the dough, which melts the oil, and also you end up with flakier, softer biscuits. I went for the traditional circular biscuits shape, and I used a mason jar, which resulted in a slightly smaller than normal biscuit size. When using the mason jar, I encountered a minor issue in that the edge did not cut very clean, so even with my massive biceps, I couldn't easily cut through the biscuit, and this kind of led to me having to wriggle it around, and it sort of mashed and got rid of those nice nooks and crannies that I initially wanted to maintain. Another regret I have with using the mason jar was that I ended up with smaller biscuits, and when you think of biscuits, you think of these big hunks, and then I ended up with these like little petite biscuits that didn't really like completely fill you up. You had to eat a couple of them, whereas like normally you get one or two biscuits and then you'd be full for the morning and you just fall asleep again, or just feel fat. And I wanted to feel fat, but this didn't really quite do that for me. And you want to maximize the number of biscuits you cut out from your first batch. This is because as you work with it more and more, the oil melts and you crush some of the layers that make the biscuit very flaky, and this results in less flaky biscuits and therefore less enjoyment. And there you have it. Now you can make your own tray of hot babes. Let me tell you a story. My friends wouldn't believe me when I told them I had a bunch of hot babes at my place. They laughed at me. They thought I was a fool, but they were the fools, because once I showed them these pictures, they just fell silent. They were asking me to come over, and I told them no, because these hot babes were all for myself. Now these biscuits, these babes, they were perfect. They were not too fatty, they were well seasoned, and they were nice and flaky in the center. Now, I woke up the next morning, sliced them open, and I filled them with my favorite bagel toppings, some vegan cream cheese, some scallions, and some everything bagel seasoning. Sure, you may judge me on how I eat these biscuits, but I was just too lazy to make gravy, and we're in New York, so you can forget about it. I really think these biscuits can be enjoyed any way you want. Gravy, of course, is optimal, but you want to make sure you get a little bit of acid in there to cut through the fat of the biscuit. I hope you all enjoyed the episode. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.